Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the inconvenience. He is somewhere in Thailand and we are in India. There was a connectivity issue. Apologies for the delay. A warm welcome to the Foreign Correspondents Club of South Asia. We are delighted to have with us uh, Nandita Hapsar, author of this book, and he's joining us, Somin, who also happens to be a member of the FCC. And warm welcome to Nandita and Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia, who has been Indian ambassador to uh, Myanmar, and he has written a book about Myanmar also, and he writes regularly in the newspapers about Myanmar. Let me introduce Nandita Aksarji. She has been a human rights lawyer since the 1980s. She has been taking up the cause of Burmese refugees since 1990 and has set up precedents in refugee law in India. Nandita ji is the author of several books, which tells me about 20 of them, including Rogue Agent, How India's Military Intelligence Betrayed the Burmese Resistance. That was in 2009. Several of our books have been awarded for spreading the message of peace, including the first ever Rotary Writing for Peace Award in 2022. Somin is joining us from Thailand, somewhere on the border between Burma and Myanmar and Thailand. He is an award-winning Burmese journalist. He is the author and the editor-in-chief of Mizima Media Group. After the military coup in February 2021, Mizima was banned. Somin and 17 other Mizima journalists are charged by the military junta in Myanmar for crimes that could carry life sentences. Somin and his Mizima team continue to work from different locations inside and outside Myanmar. We have Ambassador Raju Bhatta with us. He has been our ambassador in Myanmar. He is a distinguished diplomat and he has worked in South Africa and several other African countries. He has written a book on Africa also. I acknowledge the presence of our good friend, another distinguished diplomat, Mr. K.P. Fabian, and welcome to all of you gentlemen. May I now invite Nandita ji to tell us about how she came in contact with Somin and her association with the Burmese refugees and how she has been doing her bit to make the plight of the people of Myanmar and the refugees known to the world. Nandita ji, please.
Hello, so can you hear me? Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, Auntie. I can hear.
So
Loud
you're
and
getting nervous about what I may say. Okay. I think it's a wonderful day for both Somet and me from many points of view, political and personal. And I think for me, on a very broad scale, it's a very important book. It may be badly written, you may have your criticisms, but very few books are written in collaboration between two authors of the third world. And for that, and specifically that I don't know where any other book has been written on Indo-Burma relations by one Burmese and an Indian. So for that, I'm really proud of that aspect. And that aspect, I would like to first of all thank our publisher, our guard, Mr. Saxena, because he brought it out very quickly and with great enthusiasm, and he's here as well. I would also like to say that it's very exciting to have Mizima team here covering this event. And although they're living in exile for the second time in India, they have not lost any of their professionalism. And I think behind the camera is Situ. And so that is really a wonderful thing. And they will be selling the book, and the money goes to Mizima because not because, but I mean, in addition to all the other problems which we will discuss, Donald Trump's latest executive meant that Mizima and Mizima's 67 journalists are not going to be paid next month unless we find some other way. So this is very broadly the present situation. Now about the book. In 1988, as we know, that there was a national uprising in Myanmar, or Burma at that time. And it was at that time that once again it came very briefly in the news what was happening, not too much. And most of us, and even from my generation, and I'm 70, we knew very little of what is happening in Burma. Because of the atrocious army rule, military, junta military cruelties and barbarities, the students there, of which one of them was Somit, took to resistance, and they went into the jungles where the minority nationalities, Kavani, Shan, they were there, and from there they took to armed resistance, they learned armed resistance. But by 1991, at the same time, and when Laliji became ambassador in Myanmar, at that time, Sumit and two other of his friends thought that the whole international media has turned away from Myanmar or Burma to the Gulf War. And it was in that context that they decided to hijack a plane to get international attention. And they, although they had done armed struggle, they decided that it would be much morally a stronger position to do no harm to the passengers. And they did a non-violent hijack. In fact, and they took the Thai Airlines, and it was in, I think, November 1991 when they landed in India in Calcutta. That's how he began his life in exile in Calcutta. And I was at that moment in Manipur doing a case representing Nagas who had been victims of military atrocities in our country. And so therefore I could understand something about what military rule is. And therefore, I'm not going into the rest of the story, but that's how, and I was doing cases of the Burmese refugees who were coming out at that time. And at that time, India had a very good policy. The ambassador there was, in fact, encouraging the students to go to India to give them shelter. And to cut a very long story short, in this context, being a hijacker, he got bail after 30 MPs signed a petition for his release, for his bail. After many years, he was arrested, he was put on trial in Calcutta, and he was acquitted. So that is a memory of a democracy in India. Unfortunately, and Mizima was welcomed in India, Mizima grew in India, it was born in India, it grew in India. So from 1998, when Mizima started, it has grown and become one of the 5, maybe one of the 3 topmost media houses in Myanmar, internationally recognized. And the most important thing to me, or most inspiring thing for me, was that they went back to Myanmar after 12 years, when many other refugees from Burma chose to go for resettlement to Australia and America and Western countries, Norway and Sweden. They stuck around in India, they went back to their country, they tried to establish their Mizima there, and they did for 12 years. They survived under very difficult conditions. Those stories are in the book. And then in 2021, there was a coup. I met Sumit in 20 with the Mizima team, including Situ. Situ has a in gratis visa on his passport. That means the government welcomed him. And yet, when 21 coup happened, they came running, he came running, and some other Mizima people came running, and they came to More border. And they couldn't believe that India had changed. And that they were not welcome anymore. And I did the case to get them to Delhi, but it was very difficult. And because by then, government had decided that every refugee is an illegal migrant. So that is the parallel story of this book, of the Indo-Burmese relationships. It's more than anything else. It's a story of exceptional journalism, of very courageous journalists, and they are quite right to be proud of the fact that Mizima did not stop broadcasting for one day despite the coup, despite the fact, as the introduction was, how journalists are being picked up, tortured, detained. Yet Mizima was prepared for it. Mizima continued broadcasting after the coup, and it went into exile and into the jungles of the Myanmar-Thai border. It continues to broadcast till this day. What the Mizima army and the military regime could not do, Trump has done, that they have withdrawn the funds. That challenge too, I think Mizima is now facing and finding other ways. In the midst of this, Mizima also being a part of the movement, it never saw itself as a objective in that sense. Professional, yes, but not objective politically. They have taken part in the movement for democracy and human rights and engaged with all those issues about which I'm sure you would like to know from So himself. Their immediate issue has been humanitarian assistance, and that humanitarian assistance is not forthcoming from India except very recently. So Mizima sent the first, very small, I was involved in it in a little way, but we sent a small truck of medicines legally into Mizima there. Thereafter, the government of India has said that they will send, and they did, and they are sending. But there are many, many challenges which So and Mizima and the people in Myanmar face, which have lessons for us. Because we, of course, look like big brothers and we know all the answers. But no, today our country has many challenges, including in the northeast. And those challenges and the interaction of how Mizima deals with this, whether it is Rohingya issue or the minorities issue or ethnic, is what I think would be very interesting because now we have So with us and he could answer those types of issues. As a media company, how does he intervene in this situation? Thank you.
Thank you, Nandita ji. So, welcome for this discussion. Congratulations on the book. When you were growing up, you wanted to be a monk. Your mother said no. Then you wanted to be a soldier, but you are grossly underweight and you put lots of coins in your pockets. Even that did not help. Then you wanted to be a diplomat so that you can travel around the world. That did not happen either. Then you hijacked a plane to Calcutta from Bangkok to attract global attention to the plight of people in Myanmar and arrest of Aung San Suu Kyi. And eventually you became a journalist. And after living here for 20 years as a refugee, and after launching Mizima from Nanditaji's home, now your media house is carrying on and it is one of the three internationally recognized media houses of Myanmar. Tell us the story about how all this happened and what is the situation there. How are you coping with this financial crisis that is going on at the moment after Mr. Trump's decision to cut off US aid and so on? And you are talking to us from somewhere on the India, Myanmar, Thailand border. That's how we had some initial difficulties. The dais is yours. Please go on, Myan. So, thank you.
Thank you. Many questions. Mr. Venkat, first of all, I like to apologize to you, to all the friends and colleagues who are there, not being able to there physically. Uh, I hope I can come to travel to India again, maybe probably sometime this year. And this year, then we can have a maybe second meeting or second discussion on these issues, because there will be a lot of issues evolving and developing. I like to thank you, Mr. Venkat, FCC South Asia, for hosting this event. And of course, a very special thank you to Auntie Nandita, co-author of the book. Auntie, you have done so much for Bizima and for the people of Myanmar over the years. And we Burmese people are truly grateful for that. For I think about 35 years, you have stood by the Burmese who took sort of a shelter in India, and who continue to take shelter in India. And you have supported them, you have supported me, you have supported Mizima in any way possible. So I really thank on behalf of myself and also on behalf of the Burmese people. Regarding the book, Mr. Venkat, okay, basically, yes, as you mentioned, I mean, when I was young, like until 20 years old, I mean, my life was very normal, like many of the uh, Burmese youth who were born to a Buddhist Burman family. I belong to a Burman Buddhist family. uh, I'm very obedient, study hard, work hard. As you mentioned, I wanted to be even a military attaché when I studied international relations in the Rangoon University. Those days, we were very proud of Myanmar military uh, because Myanmar military, as you know, fought the British, fought the Japanese, fought for the independence, and I, like many others, youth, even wanted to be a part of the Myanmar military. So that was still like 1988, and but things changed. My life also changed. Uh, you will see, you will read in the book. Uh, my life from 1988 onwards basically has been a part of struggle for democracy and human rights, and that continues till today. And for those of us, we call it 1988 generation. uh, we were a kind of a we have lived under the so-called socialist regime, and we didn't have uh, media freedom. We didn't we didn't have uh, the privately owned, for example, private newspapers. Those days, the only media that we had to depend on, rely on for the for even what was happening inside the country, was BBC Burmese shortwave radio. So with that background, uh, yes, I, like many others, decided to join the resistance movement after the 1988 military coup to fight back the military with armed struggle. We were not able to do armed struggle because that time the atmosphere, the situation was very different. Uh, there was no weapons as such. Uh, as Auntie Nandita mentioned, like me and another colleague, Jan student, we were 21 years old, 21, 22 years old those days. We decided to take sort of a stage, we call it hijacking drama. Basically, we wanted to have an international attention, particularly from India. Why I'm mentioning here is because we India, uh, first of all, as the world's largest democracy. Of course, I study India. along with Soviet Union those days in the university before 1988. So India was one of my major subjects. So I was personally very enthusiastic to know about India. But more than that, India being the largest democracy, being the neighbor, we we look up India for, first of all, for support and solidarity to the democracy, human rights movement in Burma, Myanmar, but also we also uh, uh, look at India to forge solidarity, for the values and for the struggle both these two countries have been undergoing. So that's how, I mean, one of the reasons why we decided to come to India with the plane, with the hijacking, was we chose particularly India because of these reasons. And we were, particularly, I was so lucky and we were so right that we chose India as a destination in 1990 November. We were welcomed. We we were I mean, you will see and you will read in the book, we didn't have any clothes. I mean, we were with one dress, but we were given the trousers and shirts. We were, the lawyers came up, the members of parliament asked for our or bail for our release. So these were unexpected, I mean, reached to an expected level. We wanted to get India's support. Yes, we got the support those days, and not only the political support, personal friendship. Like Auntie Nandita sitting there, many. I'm sure I didn't see. I don't see all the people who are in the room, but I'm sure we had personal friendship. We got love. We got care that we got, and then we basically also learn a lot from India about, either we talk of freedom of press, democracy, even complexities of federalism, and also fascinating. I would say it is so fascinating. Indian democracy and Indian the situation is so fascinated for us that we were very proud of our those days. So that's what I like to and thank everyone. And we, I think we now after 2021 we have that new generation, the same commitment that we had in 1988, 1989, 1990. This generation after 2021 coup, the same commitment they have, the same spirit they have. They are smart. They probably are smarter than we were, and we also, but they also need the same care, the same support, the same solidarity that India used to give us those days. And so that is with a kind of that I put in the book. But when we look at the Myanmar situation, as I mentioned, I have seen the coup in 1988. I've seen the whole military's brutalities for more than 30 years. But this brutality after 2021 is inhumane brutalities. I will give you example. Usually, Myanmar military in the past, they killed their villagers, they killed particularly the minority nationalities. That was not the special, that was not strange, that was a sort of a common. But this time, they kill a person, they shoot a person, they kill a person, they take out their clothes, they drag their naked body, and they force the people to look at that dragging their naked body. They force the villagers to see that young 20 plus people are banned down and hanging on the trees. They bomb. These are everyday happening in different parts of Burma, Myanmar today. They bombed hospitals, they bombed schools, they bombed marketplaces. Okay, they can bomb or they bomb the military targets. Okay, we are in the civil war conflict. That is fine, but it is more than that. They bombed the populations, and with, of course, when they try to stage military coup on 1st February 2021, that I put it in the book, there were a whole lot of non-violent protests led by young people, 20 plus, throughout the country. And Mizima, at the time, in the jungle in Thai Myanmar border, we broadcast live of this non-violent protests, peaceful protests throughout the country. But the military, as I mentioned, responded with inhumane brutality. They shot the people on the head, but intentionally. They shot the young people. They chose the young girls to shoot on the head. So the young people didn't have any choice. They have to fight back. So they had improvised sort of a homemade weapons. That's how they started this armed struggle around April, May, June 2021. That's how they started. That I put it in the book. Today, out of 330 townships in Myanmar, 240 townships are having active fightings. This is more than two-thirds of Myanmar's townships, active fightings. And in the last 4 years, as a result of this armed resistance movement, and by different resistance groups, for the first time in history, minority nationalities and majority parliaments coming together, fighting together against the Myanmar military dictatorship. And Myanmar military lost in the last 4 years more than half of the country's territories to different resistance groups. That is what is happening now. As a result of this fight, very bitter struggle, very painful struggle, we have now more than 20 million peoples. 20, we have Myanmar population is, let's say, around 50 million population, 50 to 54 million population. A large number of populations are outside the country. In Thailand, about 7 million populations in Thailand alone. In India, in Mizoram, not less than 60,000 people are in Mizoram. In New Delhi alone, there are more than 10,000 Burmese taking shelter. So a large population, millions of Burmese population outside the country. But whatever it is inside the country, let's say about 50 million populations, more than 20 million populations need basic food, basic medicine. Myanmar military particularly and intentionally block the medicines, block the block the rice to different parts of these areas, particularly being controlled, being governed, being administered nowadays by the resistance groups. So is a huge humanitarian crisis in the country, and 2.5 million populations are internally displaced as we speak, and the number continues. I and Auntie Nandita were writing the book in the last, I think, 2, 3 years in a kind of a slow writing. That one of the challenges I faced, I think the same to Auntie Nandita, is because all these situations keep changing on a daily basis. The number of refugees are increasing on a daily basis. The number of IDPs are increasing on a daily basis. The number of airstrikes by the Myanmar military are increasing. Nowadays, they are using not only drones and airstrike, they are using even paramortar to attack the schools and hospitals and public places. So this, we put it in the book. And about Mizima, actually, when we set up Mizima, as I mentioned, we didn't have the independent media even when before 1988 and afterwards. So Mizima was established with co-founder Tendeng Ao. By the way, Tendeng Ao was arrested. I think some of you know, after the military stage coup, he was mentally tortured, badly tortured, mentally, along with some of Mizima colleagues. Total 7 Mizima colleagues were arrested and tortured. Luckily, they all are released as of today. When we set up Mizima as an independent media, it was just not for, as Auntie Nandita mentioned, not for just publishing news and information. Yes, it was important because we didn't have independent news and information. And another reason why we set up Mizima was those days, many international community were not even aware of Aung San Suu Kyi. Her name was not really even heard by many people. Many people even cannot, even those who knew, who heard about her name, they could not pronounce her name properly. That was the situation. So we wanted the international community to know about what is happening through news and information. But also we wanted Mizima to be a part of movement for democracy and federal. Burma, Myanmar with diverse nationalities, different nationalities. We know in the history, it has been a challenge for all of us. And we believe to find ways to live together, to work together in this very difficult, with these difficult challenges. That's how Mizima was. When the Myanmar military stage coup, even before Myanmar military stage coup on 1st February 2021, we were ready. We were ready. We have decided to continue Mizima television channel, particularly, even if even one Myanmar military stage coup. Why? Because we need Mizima, we need independent media, first of all, to tell what is happening about in the country, but secondly, to also provide the platform to have a discussion, to have a different voices heard, to have a venue for talking about future Burma Myanmar. That continue until today. With all these challenges, I will stop here because I think I talked a lot now already. But I will be happy to answer any question, Mr. Fanket, you have.
Thank you. So remember to collect your FCC membership card when you are in Delhi next, okay? Uh, Ambassador Rajiv Bhatia, who has been following Mediva's coverage of Myanmar, um, may I invite him to make his remarks?
Thank you very much. Good evening, dear friends. Thank you, Venkat, for hosting once again an event on Myanmar, and so nice to see so many old friends and fellow students of Myanmar affairs who are present here. Let me begin first by warmly congratulating the authors, Nandita ji and Somin, about this new book. I've just received a copy, and so I'm not in a position to comment on the book, but I feel that one more book on Myanmar is most welcome because I think it's very important for us in India to know more about Myanmar and to show more interest and more support for what is going on in our immediate neighborhood. Um, I know both the authors personally and followed their activities with interest over the years. My own association with Myanmar is also now roughly about 35 years old. In 1991, I began heading the Myanmar division of the Ministry of External Affairs, and I worked there for 3 years. And then I returned to Myanmar as India's ambassador from 2002 to 2005. And then, yet again, as the Director General ICWA, I had the chance to arrange extensively interactions between intellectuals of India and Myanmar over a period of 3 years. And so, like all of you, the interest here is, first of all, to understand what is going on in Myanmar. But it goes beyond that. I think it is very much at the human level as well. I think we all know that generation after generation, tragedies have not stopped unfolding in Myanmar. This book is about one exceptional person. Usually, we know that a journalist is supposed to present a story. He's not supposed to become a story himself. But in this case, you have an exceptional person who grew up with the revolution, who was shaped by the revolution, and at some stage he tried to shape the revolution, and now he is in exile from his own country. The story reminds us of many other great Indian leaders who themselves fought the British Raj, who had to leave India and do things, outside India to help India. So in a way, we can say that we know what is going on, behind the scene. I have full idea about how the relationship between Myanmar and the government is. I'm not taking sides in any fashion. I'm not representing anybody. I'm presenting a personal perspective. And here I have to accept that among the 3 or 4 major sources on Myanmar of information today that all of us have access to, sitting outside Myanmar, because we can't help except to take deep interest in Myanmar. One of the 3 or 4 sources, Myanmar very much figures in that list. So I know how these people have struggled and helped us to make us aware of the major changes that are taking place in that country. Let me make 2 or 3 broad points as well. First is that in India, as I noticed, there is a lot of sympathy and support for the people of Burma or Myanmar. This is for historical reasons, cultural and religious reasons, for neighborhood, ethnic ties, and the rest of that. So there should be no doubt about people's sympathy and support. But people in India have their own challenges also. They also face a very difficult neighborhood. And therefore, we have to appreciate that not merely this part of the neighborhood, but the other part of the neighborhood of Myanmar must also come forward and try to help matters. So from that point of view, I think as far as I can see, the government of India has consistently tried to, first of all, maintain cordial and good relations with whoever is running Myanmar. If it is the army, there is no difficulty whatsoever in having practical, business-like, good, friendly relations with the army. And I think this is something we must understand in a practical, pragmatic manner. The government's compulsions are different from personal compulsions of people, and government therefore obviously is perfectly right in handling the state-to-state relations. But at the same time, the second aspect of Indian government's policy on Myanmar has always been to support the democratic impulses of the people. Now, without taking sides, without imposing itself into the dispute, without claiming that we will export democracy to Myanmar, that may have been the tradition of some of the Western democracies, India has done what it can in order to explain to the leaders, elite, and people of Myanmar as to how to practice democracy, as to how to practice federal union structure, as to how to make people aware of what is required. So this is all that the governments can do, and therefore you have to appreciate that within their limitations they are doing what they can. But going beyond the government, it is the civil society, as I said in the beginning, in India, which is very important. And I think what FCC is doing to raise the level of people's awareness about Myanmar, that is something very significant. And it is in this context I have 2 or 3 questions which I would like to put to the authors because it is their day, it is their show, and probably through those questions and other questions that will positively come from the floor, we can get a better comprehension of a very complex situation. My first question to both the authors is, what is the present position in terms of fighting? Uh, is it a daily affair? Is it extensive affair? The country losing lots and lots of people, or is it sporadic? It is off and on. The first question is about the fighting. The second question is, how much of the territory is with the military and how much of the control is with the opposition? There is so much of confusion. Opposition and military sides figures with poor people like we cannot understand. And in fact, I must give credit to Somen, who last time he was here, he spoke about these differences in figures. And then he said, dear friends, let us assume that roughly 50% is with one side and 50% with the other side. Is that the case or the change? I've seen the map. I'm not very sure whether this fully reflects the reality today. That's why I'm putting it to you. You are most welcome to explain and present your perspective, because the moment you start hearing all the voices, you get really confused. And my third and last question is, what is the future you envisage in the next 2 or 3 years? Do you expect war to continue, fragmentation to continue, or do you expect some rays of hope that peace can come through national dialogue and national reconciliation, and whether in that process neighbors, including India, have any role to play according to you? So these are my 3 questions, and once again, my very warm appreciation and applause to the authors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Bhatia. May I invite Mr. Somin to answer the questions raised by Ambassador Bhatia?
Yes. In terms of fighting, as I mentioned, like 2/3 of the country's territories are now currently in active fighting. Having said that, large population centers, like for example Yangon, Mandalay, Naypyidaw, doesn't have active fightings. There were sporadic uh, protests, peaceful protests here and there, but these are generally quickly suppressed and arrested and taken away. And so Myanmar military, under the name of a State Administrative Council, led by Senior General Mayon Lai. By the way, General Mayon Lai, who staged coup on February 2021, he is commander in chief. He is also acting president, and he is also prime minister. That's the absolute power he has and he controls. So under his rule, population center like Yangon, Manili, Naypyidaw are under their tight control. The resistant forces are not able to reach to those centers as we speak. But there were, for example, the Arakan, Rakhine State in Arakan, most of, we could say 90% of Arakan are not under the control of Myanmar military anymore. They are under the control of Arakan army. Similarly, most of the areas in Chin State which border with India are not under the control of Myanmar military. If you look at Bangladesh-Myanmar border, not under the control of Myanmar military. If you look at a large border areas between India and Myanmar are not controlled by Myanmar military anymore. Similarly, a large border areas between China and Myanmar are not controlled by Myanmar military. Similarly in Thailand as well, Thai-Myanmar border as well. So we are seeing that Myanmar military, for the first time in history, Myanmar military, which I was proud of before 1988, and which people like me had and continue to fight against for democracy and human rights, Myanmar military has been losing for the first time on the ground militarily. Militarily. Of course, they don't have the people's support. As I mentioned, there were nationwide people's protest, peaceful protests from time to time, including immediately after coup. Regarding future, yes, future is very uncertain. Future for Burma, Myanmar is very uncertain. I don't know. I don't know what will happen. But what I can be sure is that Burma, Myanmar will not be the same as it was before February 2021. What is happening now, I think that can lead to what could happen. What is happening now is ethnic minorities with their due rights, that with their birthrights, are gaining control of their own areas more and more. Either you talk of Kachin, either you talk of Chin, Arakan, Karani. So that is happening, and that will likely to lead to the future where the places where minority nationalities with lots of natural resources in their areas are going to be governed more and more by by themselves. That, of course, the question is how about the whole country? Still, since Burman areas largely are under the control of Myanmar military, like half of the country's populations living in such populated areas, Myanmar military looks to continue to rule in these areas as well. So we are going to have, and we are having the areas controlled by Myanmar military, largely Burman populated areas, and the areas more and more controlled and governed by the different resistant minority groups. But as I mentioned, for the first time, even though there is no blueprint, fortunately yet, where everyone agrees for future Burma Myanmar between Burma majority and minority nationalities or minority within minorities, but they are all together for the first time fighting against the Myanmar military dictatorship. As because the fighting is so bitter, as I mentioned, painful. People are suffering. A large populations are being displaced. So the pain is that how what will this country will be. Some people say it can be fragmented. I don't know. But what we know, what I know, what we can do is as an independent media, being a part of this struggle for democracy and human rights, we what we can do also is we provide platform for discussion. We provide platform for dialogue among these different stakeholders, excluding Myanmar military for now. Why we say excluding Myanmar military? Because Myanmar military cannot be trusted, particularly this current leader. He himself is not liked and supported by many people, even within the Myanmar military. It is the fact. That's why he has to imprison many of senior generals in the last 4 years. Many are in jail. He had to because he himself is not supported and liked by many of his own people within the Myanmar military. So we don't know when there will be a time for discussion between Myanmar military and different resistance groups because the trust is gone. The pain is already there. Sufferings are already there. Tragedies are already there. But there can be we believe there will be a time when the discussions done, probably when the leadership change is there within the Myanmar military. We don't know. But there can be, that we cannot rule out. But right now, the situation, the fighting, the struggle will continue, and independent media like Mizima are determined to tell these complexities, to tell these stories to to our own people and to international community, particularly neighbors. Neighbors are important for us, particularly countries like Bangladesh, India, Thailand, because the governments, I think, should be aware that democracy is not better than dictatorship, and that is what I think we have to. We have to. Democracy is not perfect, as we all know, but democracy is better than dictatorship. Having a democracy next door is better than having a dictatorship or having a dictator rule next door. So that is what I could say. So we continue our work despite all these challenges. We continue to tell these stories. We continue to tell what is happening on the ground. One of the reasons that many of us do not go outside the country is because we want to be on the ground to tell this what is happening on the ground, to tell this to you and to all.
Thank you. So, Nanditaji, would you like to add anything to what So has said?
Ambassador, I want to ask about the future. I don't know, as So himself said, I don't know what will happen in the future of Myanmar. But I would like to point out, and a little bit in this book has been hinted at, is what is happening in Myanmar directly affects India and Northeast Asia, which again, I'm sorry, most of us are unaware of. The three things which come to every dialogue on this Northeast is, of course, the narco-terrorism, as one of the police officers said, the cybercrime, the insurgencies, both sides, and the humanitarian crisis, which is the migrants. I'm not talking about the political refugee, but the migrants who are coming into Northeast. In addition, because of this situation in Mizoram, we saw the Mizoram chief minister going to America. I apologize, my father was a diplomat, I'm not. I like to say things very clearly because I don't think, that's not an insult to you, that's just explaining my, trying to explain this, is that there was a very clearly, Chief Minister of Mizoram goes to America and says he wants a Christian state. These may or may not come, I do not know, I cannot project, but what is happening in the Chin area, which is linked to the Churachandpur, which is linked to Mizoram, which is linked to all these developments, they directly impact us. Whether they will succeed in having that kind of state or not is not my problem. The fact that they demand it will lead and is leading to a whole lot of developments, which are very serious. So this book, which I was actually saying, I was asking that why this book? How did you write it together? We don't necessarily even have the same politics, so on. But I think that's the strength of the book. And there is one issue which united So and me, which brought this book together, apart from a personal relationship, was that his commitment to a union of Burma, a united country, and my commitment to whatever shape India will take later, is a united India. Not for any abstract reason, not because I support A, B, or C party, because I think it's good for our country. And I think he thinks it's good for the country. And therefore, I think, and this is a book discussion, so I want to go back to the book, is that this is not an academic book. Academic books are very important for us to understand many aspects. But sometimes we have to understand how these foreign policies actually impact on a daily basis, how the media has to interact with this, how India's foreign policy is pro-Myanmar, and not that the media, the Indian media, I'm saying, doesn't seem to focus on the fact that India allowed Myanmar to prosper on Indian soil while supporting the junta. So the complexities of foreign policy also, I think, come out in our work in this book. I mean, as a story. So it can be read as a story. It is a story. It's a fantastic story of a journalist or a media house, surviving in this. And I would, with your permission, just like to read a bit of the book so that I want you to get a feel of the book, because we are trying to sell the book. I think my publisher would like that. I should say so this is a little bit of the most relevant. We are now getting into very serious, but I do want you to feel and understand that from where So is speaking and how and what was Mizima facing. So this is me speaking. Professor Bhatia also said, how did you write it? So in this you will hear my voice, So's brother's voice. James is one of the members of Mizima who was arrested, and one of the Western journalists who went in to Myanmar and was secretly reported. So you will get these five voices speaking from their five perspectives on Mizima and what is happening. So here is my voice. I was desperate to get news of Somin and how he was coping. I know he had been having some treatment for cancer in Thailand. There was a possibility of going to Thailand to meet him when he went there for his chemotherapy. But the COVID travel restrictions were still in place and Somin lived there without travel documents, which meant his situation was precarious. The only news I had was a quick update on Mizima, nothing on how he was managing to work in the jungles. I read reports in the media about the civil war in Myanmar and how the Myanmar military had been bombing the strongholds of ethnic minorities. Ethnic journalists told the International Federation of Journalists from Southeast Asia that from 27th May to March 27 to May 5, 2021, the Karen National Union reports its soldiers were involved in 407 armed battles with the Myanmar army. Then I quote this reporter, fighter jets have flown into Karen-controlled territory 27 times and dropped 47 bombs, killing 14 civilians, wounding 28 and forcing as many as 30,000 people into makeshift jungle camps. The videos posted on social media of the bombings and battles show that the army is at war with the citizens of Myanmar. I got an inkling of this danger when I asked Somit for an interview on March 30, 2021. And he replied asking me if it was acceptable if he could do the interview a little later. And I quote his message. Our situation here is not good at the moment. Our place will soon be attacked by airstrike by the military, and right now trying to shift our broadcast equipment across the river. After the words across the river, he added, FYI, for your information. At that time, it would have been dangerous to give the details of their equation. Myanmar continued to broadcast from the jungles around the Myanmar-Thai border in the midst of threats of aerial bombing and lack of funders willing to support them. So many messages were testimonies to the resilience of the Burmese people and the amazing courage of the Myanmar team. So I would like you to please do read this book from all these angles and to see exactly how Indo-Burma relations, Indo-Burma policy actually function at another level, at what we call very, sometimes without realize, seeing what it means is people to people. And I think this book is a testimony to that friendship of what people to people can be and how effective or not effective it can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Nandita ji. We're talking about the future of Myanmar. For 1,000 years, Myanmar was never a united country. I think only Aung San Suu Kyi's father, General Aung San, tried to unite different communities. There are 135 different ethnic groups, now 1,700 rebel groups in that country. And after he was assassinated, that was the end of it. During the last 77 years of freedom from the British, Myanmar had military rule for 53 years. And the report suggests that the army has never been as big as it is today. And the Chinese were pushing the Myanmar generals to go for elections and make up with the rebel groups. And last September, the military regime has invited the rebel groups to drop their weapons and come and fight the elections. But the opposition groups have refused to participate in the elections. And in fact, they come out with a 12-point formula to disrupt the electoral process, which they believe is illegitimate. Given that the military has been very weak, given that there are sanctions against the country as well as the military rulers by the United States, European Union, Australia, Singapore, and several other countries, the only three countries which seem to be at this point of time helping Myanmar military regime are China, Russia, and India, which are supplying weapons to the military regime. The feeling, if one reads the reports correctly, is that if the Chinese and the Indians and the Russians stop giving weapons to the regime, they will be forced to give up. And so it could be as they could be finished off as early as next year, and definitely by 2030. That is the impression one gets. So after reading reports in the global media, what are your impressions?
Yes. Should I answer?
Yes.
Yes. I think Myanmar military, for Myanmar military, they talk about elections as a way of prolonging their rule. Of course, they can, and they did, without any reason, without giving any reason, they can continue their brutal rule. But it is, they are talking elections. Why? They are talking elections because they want to get legitimacy particularly from neighboring countries, particularly because China, which I call it Chinese package, decided to support Myanmar military elections. But that is not the interest of, or that is not what the people in Burma, Myanmar wants. It is for the interest of Chinese, its own interest, to protect the economic interest, to protect its influence, to protect its control in its neighborhood. So that's why Myanmar military has to talk about elections. Myanmar military has to tell that they will have elections. Initially, when the stage coup in 2021, they talked the elections that will be held very soon, within 1 year, within 2 years. Then they started changing that the election will be held when the situation became normal, and of course the situation, and they lost the control of many parts of the country areas. Then they keep saying that now even they are not sure that whether they can have elections in the areas which they control, even in 2025. But they keep saying, because they want legitimacy, particularly they want recognition, they want support from neighboring countries, and also ASEAN. So I think that is where we are today. And but for the people, particularly the people in the ethnic minority areas, the elections is nowhere. It cannot be held at all. And even in the urban areas, city areas, the the election cannot be held peacefully. And plus, there is no opposition in any of the election that Myanmar military will hold, if they hold. Aung San Suu Kyi, as you know, this time, I mean, before 2010, she was under house arrest for many years. But this time, she is in prison. She is in prison. She is above 80 years old, and she is in prison. And seems that everyone forgot her. And because of the situation, what had happened in 2017 in Arakan, Rakhine, because of what happened to Rohingyas, everyone just forgot her. Everyone tried to forget her. But we know that she is still very much loved by many people, and it is very sad to see that people don't even mention her name nowadays. So Myanmar military knows all this. Myanmar military doesn't want her to lead, and that's why there's no single leader, particularly in the Burman majority community, because she is forgotten, she is in prison, and she is put backyard. Of course, people, in the minds of the people, in the hearts of the many people, she is still loved. And of course, as you must be hearing, Myanmar military try to use our release in the last 4 years as a bargaining chip. The day she said she will not support the armed struggle, she will probably released. But she will, even though she doesn't support armed struggle, she will not say this. That's how she is in jail until today. So this is how we see things with the elections and with what is happening in the country. And of course, Myanmar situation, Burma situation, never united in the history, very complex. We have many nationalities, many minorities with minorities, the historic divide between Brahmin and majority and minorities. But as a journalist, as an independent media, we want to and we will continue to tell this. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any of you like to add or say anything about this? Ambassador Mathia? Yeah, the session is thrown open to questions. If anybody has any questions, kindly raise your hand, wait for a microphone to come to you, identify yourself and ask the question. Thank you. Yes, Ambassador Fabian?
Thank you so much. And first of all, congratulations for organizing this. And I personally learned a lot. I was in Burma. Nobody was talking about Myanmar at that time. For this, we had negotiations on the border. That was a long time. Now, I am of course going to read the book. There is no need to sell it because if it's available, it will be grabbed. Now, my question is, what have the foreign powers who have some clout with the military and also with those who are opposing the military, what have they done so far? And is it possible that these foreign powers, including the global south led by India, is it possible for them to sort of persuade the sides concerned to come to an arrangement that the military will sort of agree to arrangement for a free and fair election, and also that whosoever wins the election will not be vindictive towards the military leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. So would you like to answer that?
Yes, but Auntie Nandita and whoever, you also please answer whatever you think. I can also answer. For me, Myanmar military has in 1990 shown that it cannot be trusted. In 1990 elections, Nationally for Democracy won a landslide victory, and those who won the elections, members of parliament, were either put in jail, including Aung San Suu Kyi, under house arrest, or many of them had to leave the country. So that was one example in 1990. Then in 2020, with the landslide victory of NLD again, Myanmar military stage coup. So there was a deficit of political trust by the different stakeholders, including by the ethnic nationalities, minorities, nationalities, why they should trust Myanmar military this time again if they said they will hold the elections. So that has to be dealt with. The trust, political trust. So how it can be dealt, that is what the one of the demands of the different resistance groups is. Let's have changes fast. Let's have democracy. Let's have freedom. Let's have a discussion. Let's have an agreement before any elections can be held. So Myanmar military is not going to, it's not doing that. And I don't think, to be honest, they will do that, because the day they do that, they will be, there will be a big question of justice. Justice has to be there because many injustice has been done to millions of peoples, and many injustice has been done to different communities and nationalities in the country. So unless there is a real political change, whoever does, even if China, China has been really pushing for the SAC, State Administrative Council, to hold elections. This will not succeed. This will not be a genuine, long-lasting peace, long-lasting way out of country's solution. That's what I like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Um, I just wanted to add one dimension to this. Because when Dr. Tan, when we have a discussion, we are talking about government to government. And then, of course, we have you know, the other diplomatic circles, and that is happening. And diplomatic track 1 and track 2, all these things are happening. But I think there are few things which we can all do, those of us who are not involved in that official process, and especially media, because that's why I think that what FCC is doing is so important, and is to place these issues in different ways, whether it's an opinion piece or their stories. And one very important emphasis I would like to give is the refugees who are in India. I'm not talking about illegal migrants, I'm talking about political refugees, just as the Mizima people were at one time. I think they should be treated as a resource, because they are the ones who will rule, or they will have a say in the future of Myanmar. Now, these people, the 10,000 who are in Delhi, the government of India has allowed the national unity government to have an office, but it doesn't allow them to speak. I think that there is a area in which people or media can actually assist in a growth of an understanding. And all these minority people are in India. So there is a need to reach out to them and to have some kind of talks here of building up a vision of Indo-Myanmar relations, or it may be of helping raising questions, because these are the people who will go back, just as So and others went back. So, two things I would just like to tell you. One is that this refugee community, which is sitting in Mizoram, that is the entire, almost the majority of the government. They are the future government of Myanmar. Why are we not talking to, we means media. I don't represent government, either government. I'm talking about the role of civil society in media. Second, the government of India did and has taken a very important step in our history, I think, in which it called the armed group and had a talk with them. And how they will work that out, I do not know. But I believe that in civil society interventions, informed interventions, can go some way in answering the question that Ambassador Fabian has raised. And just for your kind of, just to give you a feel what the refugees are facing, few days ago, this is just recently, what is happening is that the refugees are facing threats all the time. That's not a good way to make friends with anyone. And they will go back with not good memories, although we as a country have given them that hospitality, welcome them. But that experience that they have make them anti-Indian. So, for instance, there was just one incident in which one 13-year-old child was stabbed. It's not an isolated incident. I've gone to Vikaspuri. These refugee children are being stabbed. And by whom? They were stabbed by government of India's school children. Because there's an atmosphere in which it is okay to stab some foreign people who are coming here. If we want to counter that, and I'm not saying it even from a human rights or any of this, I'm just saying practically, if you have refugees, they should go back with a good feeling for India, not a racist feeling, not hostility to us. So these stories, whether it's a reporter or at the correspondence level or senior editor opinion pieces, I think that's a very crucial role in this problem. Sometimes it may or may not be, but in this problem, we really need this. So I'm really grateful that I'm getting a chance to speak. I'll be grateful for more chances, so am I. Right?
Yes, please.
My name is
Use the microphone, please.
my name is Anil Hegde. I've been a former member of parliament, and in the most of the last decade of the last century, and most of the first decade of this century, I was living in the same overground headquarters of the underground Burmese people, which is the ADSL office, which is George Fernandez's house in number 3 Krishnaman Mark. And I fondly remember how Nandita ji used to help Somin when he was landed the aircraft in this thing, Calcutta and later on. Yeah, I don't want to take much time. I just want to remember during the earlier book release, which was on the 5th of March 2003, which was a Burma file, a question of democracy, collection of reports from Nizima. That time, I only want to remember Sumin's words, last word, that was country will find a publisher publishing a book by a hijacker and a minister releasing the hijacker's book. This is India. This is why I love India. This is what Somin said in that. And there are many such incidents. The International Conference for Solidarity, restoration of Burma, restoration of democracy in Burma, and there are so many protests to be jointly participated in. For example, Health Minister of Burma visited here, and there was a function in Vigyan Bhavan where we get trashed there, and for years the thing went on, years went on and on. And anyway, thank you, Nandita ji, for this thing, writing this book. And one more last thing I want to remember is when George Fernandez became a minister, defense minister, within 2-3 days, Somin was organized a meeting in Speaker's Hall. I was driving the car. It was a Sunday. I was driving the car, and George Fernandez was sitting in the by the side, and Somin was sitting in the back seat. He was telling George Fernandez that you speak about this, speak about this. George Fernandez said, "Now I am a minister. Minister acts. He will not speak," he said. But later, I also want to remember, and there was accusation on George Fernandez by Admiral Bhagwat on whatever George Fernandez had done. Anyway, thank you.
Any questions? Okay, may I ask the last question? So, the military got used to power and they ran the country for 70% of the time. Myanmar has been a free country. Assuming in the not too distant future, the army is forced to give up or is defeated by these rebel groups, do you see the possibility of all these groups coming together to form a federal government where different ethnic groups will have their own, little centers of power or something like a union of the republic states like in India or the United States or other parts of the world? Is that a possibility? Do you think that will ever happen? Because it has never happened in your history. So,
having been a part of the struggle, being a part of witnessing the oppression, being oppressed, I believe the people in Burma, Myanmar definitely know that they will pay, and they are the ones who will have to pay prices of not being united. When they have a chance to be united, when they have a chance to be united, to be supported, I think they will be there together. They will The only question is when and how. Of course, there are we are not sure yet what type of being together, what type of living together, what type of working together. We don't know. Federalism, confederation, we don't know yet. But definitely, even in the last 1.5 years, we have seen more and more hard work being put by different groups, resistant groups, different political groups, different CSOs, even media, independent media like us, coming together because I think their life have proved and their life have told them that they have to be together, they have to be united. I think that is the, the, the essence of the struggle. Of course, a lot of them, a lot of us, a lot of this work need the support. That's why we are looking at Indian experiences, Indians politics. We are looking at They are looking at India's kind of a federalism that India is doing either good or bad or weaknesses and strength, and we are looking at the examples from others, and we are trying to learn as we also continue the fight to get rid of military dictatorship. Military, every country needs military. Myanmar, Burma will have a military, but military has to be democratic. What we have is a dictatorial military, a dictatorship, and I'm very sure. I think I can say on behalf of many of the people fighting for democracy that they, with the democratic military, there will be a united nation, united Burma Myanmar in future in one form or another. Thank you.
Well, all the best, so before we conclude the meeting and I propose a vote of thanks, may I invite Ashok Sharma to present mementos to our distinguished panelists, Nandita ji and Ambassador Bhatia.
So should I take your?
Yes,
Yes, yes, yes. I will pick it up from you later.
Taking it from you. Or you.
Yes, yes.
well,
I will
thanks
pick it
very
up.
much, Nandita ji and Ambassador Bhatia and Ambassador Fabian and the publisher of the book and audience and people who may be watching it on all the social media platform. It has been a very useful discussion on the situation in the neighboring country of India. And thank you so very much. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.